Welcome back to Lens on Africa. It's about that time every week where we have our weekly conversations. And before we do, here is a short backgrounder to set the pace.
As the world races on to new frontiers in artificial intelligence, communication and information technology, renewable energy, and biohacking, Africa's development deficit remains staggering and is poised to increase exponentially. Can Africa reduce the development deficit and sustain its developmental strides while finding her comparative advantage? Experts agree that agriculture is one area that Africa has significant comparative advantages, and Africa can leverage on agriculture to both reduce the development deficit and reposition herself as a leading continent in the emerging global order. This week on Lens on Africa, we speak with experts in agriculture and sustainable development to discover why and how Africa can move from dependency to a global agricultural powerhouse.
To carry on this conversation on leveraging agriculture for Africa's sustainable development is a rare sustainability leader and with vast hands-on experience in building sustainable supply chains, products, and organizations. She manages multi-million-dollar projects across the agribusiness value chain and other sectors. She has degrees and certifications in sustainability leadership from Harvard University, agricultural business management from Lagos Business School, MBA Sustainable Development from UCL Central Africa Republic, and other degrees and certifications. She is Mrs. Osenaga Orokpo. Welcome to Lens on Africa.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. All right. So what is the core principle of sustainable development and how does that affect this generation and future generations?
Okay. Thank you for having me. First of all, I'd like to, just in a very basic form, define what sustainable development is so that at the end of this discussion, when people who are non-sustainability experts listen, they will be able to equally implement what we sustainability experts know. So basically, sustainable development is like a principle, that aims to achieve one thing, the progress of human development needs. But as you are doing that, you have to ensure that the natural ecosystem does not suffer. You have to ensure that the natural ecosystem is enabled. And the principles of the sustainable development is, number one, you must conserve the natural ecosystem. We're talking about air, land, water, underwater. We're talking about preserving or conserving the biodiversity. That's another very core principle. Beyond we humans, there are other elements, other living things on the earth. There's humans, there's humans, that's we, there are plants, there are animals, and there are even microorganisms underneath the soil. So while we thrive every day to develop our humanity, we have to ensure that these things also do not suffer. It's also very important to conserve human resources. So what this basically means is that human beings develop themselves in different corners. So when you develop yourself in one corner as a human being, you also have to be conscious of the fact that there is another human being. So basically, when you understand these principles of sustainable development, you'll be able to even carry it out to the minutest of things. So it goes beyond just the global or African framework, but even as individuals, we'll be able to carry out real sustainable development when we understand these principles. Okay, speaking
as a typical Nigerian and African, we like life pretty simple. This sounds like very complex thinking, so I have to think of which microorganism my farm may be destroying, which bird. It's just a bird. Why should I care about it? Shoot it down, and why should I care about some leaves, some grasses? Why are all this important? Why not just I need a house and I'm important and the birds can go find some other tree to perch on?
It's important to understand that every organism, every man, every plant, every animal has a role to play on this earth.
Okay.
From the time of creation, everything and everyone has a role. So it is selfishness to think that you are the only one that has a place on this earth. That's the first principle of sustainable development, which everyone, every country has to understand. There are other countries apart from us. There are other people apart from us. Yeah. And so it's important that we respect everyone.
I think a case in point was an African country, I think it was Egypt or so, that got rid of pigs because they didn't like them. And they found out shortly afterwards that the pigs were carrying out a very important function in their waste disposal. So they had to reintroduce pigs back into the society. So you're saying essentially sustainable development seeks to create a balance in all the things, both things we can see and things that we can't see, so that the system runs perpetually.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good. So I'm going to ask the next question. So how can agriculture play a role in promoting sustainable development in Africa, and what are some of the key challenges and opportunities in this context?
Okay. You know the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17. Yeah. I'd like to, highlight some of them.
Okay.
And just side by side tell you what agriculture does. So first of all, one key Sustainable Development Goal is zero poverty.
Yeah.
Another one is zero hunger.
Yeah.
So let's look at zero hunger.
Okay.
You cannot solve the problem of hunger without talking about food, providing food. And food is agriculture, the provision, the cultivation of plants and animals to feed people and to create food systems. Yeah. Zero poverty is another important goal. Data states that 70 to 80% of Nigerians are involved in agriculture. Yeah. Checking the entire continent, 75%, more than 75% of Africans are involved in agriculture. And therefore, it means that many people create wealth systems out of agriculture. Okay. Now, these are the opportunities. In speaking more about the opportunities, in Africa, we have land, we have the population, we have the best of weather. So what else do you want? Okay. Then speaking about the challenges are enormous. There is challenge of the knowledge. There's very reduced knowledge in terms of, the improved varieties that we need to cultivate. Yeah. There is challenges around access to finance. There is also challenge around, even if the land is there, sometimes there's a challenge of land titles. So these are big challenges that plague, the agricultural systems and stop it from thriving, across the continent.
Okay, so I'm going to push in more on the issues of the challenges we're facing. You mentioned that about 70% of Nigerians are involved in agriculture, and in Africa, probably about 75%. And if we have that number of people involved in agriculture, why are we not yet food sufficient? I mean, it's boggling. We should be exporting we should be bleeding and overflowing with food all across the place. If that many people are involved in agriculture, what's stopping us from optimizing it? I mean, what are the issues? So
there are over 33 million farmers in the whole of Africa.
That's a lot of farmers.
That's a lot. And over 70% still of these farmers are smallholder farmers. Oh. So to explain, a smallholder farmer has a maximum of 1.5 to hectares.
Okay.
He's probably using the same seeds every year. Oh. He's also spending a lot of money to get labor, to also get inputs. And mind you, he has to manage his post-harvest, the post-harvest activities, which also is capital intensive. Okay. He has to transport his goods to the market.
Okay.
All of these activities are capital intensive. So by the end of the day, when the farmer tries to deduct the expenses from what he actually makes, he's making nothing more than 60 to 100 USD for an entire year. Mm-hmm. Now, this is very little because this farmer has 2 wives or more, has children, has to feed. The children have to go to school. There are hospitals that the children need to go to if they fall ill. So there are many issues. And so when you look at all of these social issues, plus the fact that he's a smallholder farmer, meaning that the very improved technologies that he requires to be able to thrive, he doesn't have them. Okay. And then he's also struggling with access to finance. Mind you, many of these farmers do not have the best of inputs. They do not have access to the best of inputs. And so he literally cannot produce so much. And that is why we see that in Africa, it's difficult for us to achieve food sufficiency.
Wow. This is very interesting. Sorry, I'm going to push a little bit more on in this particular direction. And so now that we've identified the problem and elucidated it quite clearly, what can be done? Do we run agricultural cooperatives, government intervention? Because we're really running out of time in the development fair. Africa is really behind, and agriculture is a part, like you've mentioned. We have the land, we have the weather, we have the young population. We can buy our own food if we need to. There's no reason why we can't be self-sufficient in agriculture. So what are the logical next steps as a sustainable person, and you've managed complex system before? What are the logical next steps that we can take to ensure that some of our farmers begin to move from this subsistent level? I mean, $60 to $100 a year is really depressing, to be frank. What can we do to move this step forward?
So I'll give you 6 steps that the farmers have to be taken through. And this is not just about the farmer now, but it calls for stakeholder engagement. It calls for stakeholder participation. Beyond the farmer, the government needs to play a role, private sector needs to play a role here, research institutions need to play a role. So the first step is to provide financing. I see a lot of financing support from private sector. The CBN has been doing the Anchor Bora program for a very long time. So there's huge financing going to provision of inputs. I also think that more needs to go into mechanization as well. Then the second thing is for intervention to go into yield enhancement strategies. That is to look at improving the varieties of the seeds that we plant within Africa. As I told you, majority of the farmers are reusing the seeds that they use, and many times they're even planting grains and not seeds. So these are,
what's the difference, please?
Grains actually for consumption. And seed is for multiplication. Right. So sometimes when you have to mix all of that, what happens is that your yields are really like less than what you should be getting ordinarily.
So where is the farmer supposed to be getting the seeds from?
Research institutions, and that's why I mentioned that the farmer is supposed to not just work alone now, but get stakeholders involved in what he's doing. And then apart from yield enhancement strategies which have to be improved, it's very important now to pay attention to capacity building. We need to try to sponsor farmers to go to places like Vietnam. We need to get farmers to go to some of these countries where there are real improved technologies being implemented, and then they're able to learn from it. It's also very important to invest in social aspects of the farmers' lives. So this helps to improve the quality of the farmers' lives, such that he's not just planting for us as Africans, but the government, private sector can look at the farmers' community and say, in X community, there are 8 million farmers. Let's pump in money to provide free education for their children. Let's pump in money to provide water for them. Let's pump in money to provide electricity for them. So what you see happening there is that the quality of their lives improve. And then the farmer is happier to produce the food that we need. Lastly, I would want to add that we pay attention to youth engagement, we pay attention to women empowerment. These classes of people play huge roles, but I don't think we're doing enough. Women have the capacity to pay back loans faster than men. And I'm not saying that because I'm a woman. I'm saying that because I've run numerous programs, and for the most part, the women are very quick to pay back. Women have better capacity to work in cooperatives and do the savings interloaning culture. It's also important to pay attention to climate action, where you introduce regenerative agriculture, you plant trees. When you do that, you will see real sustainable development happen within the continent.
I must say, as a man, I think the men will hold me responsible if I don't say, I object. Men pay back too.
They do.
But I think it's actually the truth that women pay back faster. And we can talk about that in another conversation. But let me ask, you've already talked about it more, but let's drive home on the issue of women and youth empowerment. How can that really help in achieving our sustainable development goals?
We have another big problem in Africa, and that is we have an aging population. Majority of the farmers currently are within the age of 60, And that is an aging population in, for example, Nigeria, where our average age is, 19? So it tells you that the majority of the young ones are not really engaged in the not agriculture, but in the important aspect of agriculture, the farming. That's very important. So what can we do? Private sector plays a key role. Again, government plays key roles. But I always talk about private sector because that's where I've worked, and I've seen that they can be faster than government, and they are big support systems even for government. So private sector can carry out interventions, partnerships with universities. I'll give an example of what we are doing currently in my establishment. We have what we call the Sesame Academy, where we are working with young people from young graduates, NYC corpers, and even young university students. And in that academy, we train them on different modules across different subject matter area of agriculture and of specific crop productions. So when these youths become knowledgeable, what we do is we even have expanse of land where they are giving, say, 1 hectare, 0.5 hectare, and apart from that, they're also trained. So when these youths understand that, okay, I can get access to improved technology, I can get access to land, they're better interested, they're more attracted. And then beyond this, there's research roles that youths also have to play. And so we need to give them that opportunity to start thinking for us. What are the improved types of seedlings that we can use? What are the improved technologies? Youth can help us fabricate tools that we need. We had a very big issue in Kebbi recently where there were birds, ravaging the farms. So many countries are thinking of solutions to scare birds. The youths can do that for us. And then looking at women, I know that the real work of farming can be backbreaking for women. But first of all, I must mention that we have many women who are doing farming and who are succeeding. More women should be given access to land. More women should be given access to the inputs that they require. There should be customized trainings for more women, because in some parts of Nigeria, you may not be able to get the women out, so we need to think about customizing these trainings. That's really the whole idea of mainstreaming gender in agriculture. So once we can do that, we'll see that everyone is playing an important role and contributing greatly to the entire food system.
It's fascinating listening to you, because typically we'll just think, oh, it's agriculture, go out there, dig get a hole, get a tractor, dig the ridges and plant the crops and harvest them. But what you talk about is something beautiful but complex system that can, be sustainable in the long term. Let's talk about regional integration in agriculture, and how can that help information sharing and research and development and all that in the agricultural sector?
Regional integration. So thank you. That's a very important question, especially when we're looking at the African context. Every country has a role to play. Every country has crops that they are better in. For example, here in West Africa, we have grains. To East Africa, they have tea, they have coffee. In some parts of West Africa, we also have cocoa. In some parts of Africa, they also have improved knowledge. So regional integration is very important because there is the huge chance of knowledge sharing. ECOWAS can play a key role. The African Union can play a key role in ensuring that all of these countries and their ministries of agriculture are sitting down and discussing policies, discussing, not just policies for farming now, but policies around trade. I think the AFCFTA has also done fantastic, in that regard. I remember one of the meetings we had a few months ago, President Ruto was saying to us that, hey, Africans coming into Kenya for the AFCFTA conference, I'm promising you that this is the last time you will be paying to get a visa. Wow. To come into Kenya. Well, I think that's ambitious, because I think after some time, it will take some time really for that to happen. But I applauded that, because it just shows me that he's thinking about not just regional integration now, but continental integration. So it's very important, because every part of Africa has their strengths, that they can contribute to the other part of Africa, and they also have their weaknesses. And trust me, we are whole as a continent, but we need that integration to happen so that we'll truly be able to learn from each other and contribute to each other, and then also trade with each other. It's very important.
Fantastic. We're running out of time, so I'm going to ask you if you had an opportunity to speak to Africans and African head of state. NTA is the largest network in Africa. Lots of people are listening across the continent. What would you like to say first to the farmers and the government, and then the everyday people, the young people and women?
To the farmers, we appreciate the work, the enormous work that you do. Be assured that Africa applauds you, and be assured that Nigeria also, which is the largest population in Africa, applauds you as well. To the government, we see your great work, not just the national governments, but governments at the regional and continental level. We see the policies that have been developed to really make agriculture thrive. So we support every policy that's been developed, and we really hope to see these policies implemented for the good of the average African. For the average African listening to me, and the average Nigerian as well, I like to say, be strong and keep going. In Africa, agriculture has great potentials, and I see that these great potentials are unfolding. Just give it a little time, and we begin to see many of these things manifest.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on Lens in Africa. My guest has been Osenaga Oropo, Sustainable Development Expert across the continent.
At Shield Africa, we are committed to delivering sustainable solutions to some of Africa's most pressing development challenges. Through agricultural development, community empowerment, and strategic partnerships, Shield Africa is committed to driving socio-economic growth across the continent. I am excited to officially invite you to the Shield Africa Summit 2024. This summit will provide a platform to discuss critical issues such as food insecurity, poverty alleviation, and the promotion of sustainable agricultural practices in Africa. It will be a hub for thought leadership, collaboration, and innovation in Africa's agricultural sector. As part of this event, we will also present the Shield Africa Agripreneur of the Year Awards, recognizing exceptional youths within ages 18 to 35 who are making a significant impact in transforming Africa's agricultural landscape. Winners will receive seed grants of 2 million naira each to support the scaling of their businesses. In the course of the week, application links for the Shield Africa Agripreneur of the Year Awards will be available on our website, www.shieldafrica.org, as well as our social media handles. We encourage you to visit the site and register for the opportunity to showcase your contributions to agriculture in Africa. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you at the summit.